So now we're listening to Day of the Dead, The Experience, Part 2. So in the previous audio piece, I told you about being on the elevator. And to be honest with you, that was kind of a bittersweet experience because although I got to see George and Mike Gornick, cinematographer, and Tom Savini, I didn't really get to do that much except ride an elevator. And once again, I'm sure most George Romero fans would have given their right arm to have been in that film in any capacity. So I was pretty lucky. But there was to be another experience for Day of the Dead. And basically, I was not called and asked to be in a better scene. I called them. I'm one of those people that doesn't give up. And I called and I talked to somebody else at the time. I don't remember who she was. It might have been Felice, but I'm not sure. And I said, hey, is there anything? It was about 2 weeks later. And at the time, I was a house parent at a group home in Ohio. So one of the struggles I had was getting off of work to do this kind of thing. So it was, I believe, in November. So we shot, if I'm not mistaken, late October for the elevator scene. And then 2 weeks later, feeling rather like ambitious and like needy, I called and asked them, got a hold of her, asked if there was anything else available. And she said, as a matter of fact, we have a scene that we need somebody about your size, if I remember that correctly, that conversation. And I go, what would it entail? And she goes, well, you would get real makeup. And I said, I'm in. That's all I care about, real makeup. No more tight-fitting masks. I'm in. And she laughed and said, okay. She goes, we're filming at the Manor Nike missile site again. And basically the context of the scene is you will be chasing soldiers and they will fall down and you will eat them. Oh, I get to eat someone as well. Now that is a George Romero's fan dream come true, to actually get to eat people. Little did I know that was going to be also one of the more memorable days of my life for very unhappy reasons, which I'll get to that. I won't say unhappy, but I will say memorable in a not so good way at that time. Now I look back on it and go, wow, did it really happen? And yeah, I would do it again. But then it was a different story, which might get into part 3 before I can even get into that. So I was invited to be a actual makeup zombie. I think we would have been at that time intermediates. I don't think we would have been called lead zombies, but intermediate zombie. And we were told to go to the Manor Nike missile site. And this time, I had a very difficult time finding somebody who wanted to go. And it's like, I cannot believe this. You know, you could be in, as the teaser says, the most eagerly awaited day in horror film history, and you don't want to. It really was amazing. But I finally found someone, my friend Rick, who I believe is still a producer at National Public Radio now, a great friend, and he agreed to go. So that's very surreal to know you're going to be in a much better scene and you're going to get to eat someone. So I believe it was November of '84. And the first thing that we did before we left, I wanted to introduce Rick to the world of George A. So we ended up, Romero. So we ended up watching Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead on VHS in my little apartment in the upstairs of this group home before we left. And we left in the middle of the night, basically. It's about a 4.5-hour drive to Pennsylvania, to that area of Pennsylvania. And this is where it gets kind of comical and interesting. And I had been told to go to the Manor Nike missile site. So I remember everything, how to get there, what we look for. We ate breakfast at the Hardee's at the foot of the hill. And we drove up. And the first thing I noticed was there was no signs in the woods. And I went, oh, that's interesting. They must automatically assume I know where I'm going. And I was told I was not going to be with very many people. So it really felt like an exclusivity here to some degree. So we're driving up the road. And of course, to the left, I should have mentioned this in part 1, there's all these tech companies. You see a ton of scientific and tech companies to your left. Now that I know what Manor Nike missile site was, because I didn't know it at the time, I get it. And I get kind of creeped out thinking about that now because I'm sure there was a connection from the Manor Nike missile site to why there's all these scientific tech companies as you go up the road. That's a very interesting thing. So we go up the road and we get to the top of the hill where the Manor Nike missile site is, and the fence is closed. It's empty. There's no one there. And I thought, uh-oh. And my friend Rick looks at me and goes, Tom, is this the right day? And I go, yeah, I'm positive it's the right day. Now, folks, you've got to remember back then there was no cell phones. So I was kind of stranded, at this gate thinking, did I screw up? Did I get the wrong day? So as we're up by this gate, and it's a big, big, wide gate, a camouflage truck drives up. Now, in my stupid mind, well, actually, it wouldn't have been stupid. It would have made sense. That are soldier extras, because on that camouflage truck was a bunch of soldiers. And I thought, okay, here we go. These are the extras. They must have dressed down, some other place, and now they're coming up to be filmed. And my friend Rick looks at me and goes, I have a feeling those are not extras. I go, yeah, that's what it is. It's got to be. So the truck stops by us. Now, here we are, two guys from Ohio, standing at the gate of a rather, I don't want to use the word top secret military base, but we'll say not everybody can just be there at that gate. And most people, unless you worked there and lived there, would not know it's there in the first place. Or if you had just happened to have been in the elevator scene, you would know where you're going. But it was a different scenario. And I remember the sergeant who was riding along with the driver, he got out. And he looked at us and he said, basically, what the hell are you guys doing here? And I'm an idiot. And I laughed and I said, we're here for Day of the Dead. He goes, get out of here. And I said, man, your costume is wonderful. I know that's what I said at the time. And this guy's looking at me like I'm completely a moron. And he's got his hand on the butt of his gun. And I'm not getting it. I thought it was a prop. And he said in so many, I won't use the expletives, get the hell out of here. You are unauthorized to be here and you need to leave. And I guess I didn't realize the severity of a civilian being at that gate at that time. And I said, we're here to be in a movie. He goes, there's no movie being filmed here and you need to leave now. And he kept tapping the butt of that gun. And my friend looked at me and goes, let's go. And I said, no, I'm here for Day of the Dead. I'm not leaving. Oh boy, was that stupid. And if this had been post 9/11, that would have been really bad. I probably would have found myself in some room standing there in my boxers with a big light in my face, wondering what the hell I was doing trespassing near a military base that just happened to be called the Manor Nike missile site. So anyway, here's what part one of what saved me. One of the soldiers, I remember they had the opening in the back, and he kind of peered out and he goes, wait a minute, are you guys here to be in that Night of the Living Dead sequel? And I said, yes. And the sergeant goes, what are you guys talking about? And the kid said, Sarge, they were filming that movie here, a while ago while we were doing war games. He goes, we're not filming now. So basically he said, get the F out of here. So we did. We left. We get to the bar, we drive away. My friend Rick says, we're going back to Ohio. I cannot believe that just happened. And I said, man, I'm confused. I don't get this. This is supposed to be where we are supposed to be filming. And this is going to be a great scene. And no, hell no, I'm not going back to Ohio. Now I'm telling the driver that wasn't cool. But let's figure this out. Well, again, no cell phones. I didn't write down the number of, where Fully Salami called me from. So this is the most unusual experience I'm about to relate to you as to how this day was salvaged. Because there was a 99% chance, no, I'll change it, 99.9% chance that I was not going to be in that film that day. And probably if that had not happened, my life would not have gone to the direction it did. It's that simple. And I owe it all to an older woman who just happened to be the best telephone operator on the planet Earth. So at the bottom of the hill by the Hardys, there is a payphone. So I begged my friend Rick, before we give up on this, I need to make a phone call. He goes, okay. So I get out, and I don't have anything written down, but it's kind of like the scene in Blues Brothers where Belushi goes in the phone booth and doesn't want Aykroyd in there because basically he's bullshitting Aykroyd as to that he has a contact, so they can do a gig. So I'm standing there at the payphone with no piece of paper, with no number, totally helpless. It was very cold, and I'm thinking, I don't know what to do. So I dialed 411. Information back then, Remember, no cell phones back then. This was November of '84. And I get this operator, And I say, I am looking for the telephone number for, and of course I started off with the most obvious and the most difficult to obtain, George A. Romero. She goes, yes, I have a listing for George A. Romero. It's unlisted. She goes, I can give you one more. And I said, okay, fine. Tom Savini. Yes, I have a listing for Tom Savini, but it's unlisted. I go, thank you. And she goes, whatever. And she hangs up. So I'm thinking, shit, I can't give up. So I got another operator at 411. And this was an older woman, the lady I would love to give flowers to and give a big hug to. I'm sure she's not living, but someday when I'm in heaven, I'm going to look her up. I hope she's up there with me, or I hope I'm up there with her rather. So I'm in the phone booth, and my friend is getting impatient, and I know he figures out by now that I'm desperate and I'm drawing straws at every possible straw to salvage this freaking day. And I was sick to my stomach, and I felt like, I was pushing back tears. I thought, this cannot be happening, that I'm going to screw up. Something is wrong here. So, and I knew it was a do or die. I was not going to be in that film if I didn't figure this out. So this older operator, she goes, well, and I told her exactly the plight I was in, and she kind of understood, and she said, well, she goes, let's look for different, derivatives of this film. So we looked for Day of the Dead Productions, nothing. So she goes, I have a Laurel Entertainment in Pittsburgh. I go, yeah, let's try that, because Laurel Entertainment was obviously the production company. And it rang and rang and rang, and there was no answer. I thought, well, the office is closed. So I said, can you try Laurel Entertainment in New York City? And because I knew that was in New York. And she goes, we're sort of expired. She goes, but I'll tell you what. Let me look at some other things here. Let me look at some new listings in the Pittsburgh area to see if I can find, because sometimes they'll put a temporary number up that is actually like a production office. I mean, this older lady was so smart. And she goes, okay, there's nothing there. Oh, she goes, here's something. And this is about 3 months old. It's Laurel-Day. And I went, oh my God, that's got to be it. That has to be it. And the call goes through. I'm looking at Rick grinning, thinking, you're not going to believe this. I think we're almost home. And the phone rings, and a woman on an answering machine answers and says, you've reached the production headquarters for George A. Romero's Day of the Dead. If you're interested in being a zombie, please leave your name, your telephone number, and if we need you, we'll get back to you. It was something to that effect. Beep. And I yelled into the phone, this is Thomas Brown. I'm supposed to be in Day of the Dead. I've been in there once. I was supposed to be in Day of the Dead today. I'm at the Manor Nike missile site. I have no freaking idea where I'm at, why I'm here, because they're not filming anything here. Please help me. And I was about to leave the number of the payphone when somebody picked up. And of course, in the back of my mind, I'm going, there is a God. And that is the end of part 2 of Day of the Dead, The Experience.